Boo! It was 9:30 on Christmas Eve. Welcome to my video on the woman in black. So the aims of this video are to clarify the story of the play for you. Historically, pupils can get confused about who the woman in black actually is and the story that surrounds her. We're going to explore the style and the genre of the production and how those are reflected in the performance that you watched, and we're also going to give you some easy ways to start evaluating the key elements of the performance. As well as me talking, I have interwoven some activities for you, so just pause the video when you get to them, have a go and enjoy. Okay, so we're going to start with a little quiz just so you can see how much you already know about the woman in black. All you need to do is pause the video after each question so you've got time to write down your answer, and at the end of the video we'll come back to the answers. Okay, question number 1. Who wrote the original novel The Woman in Black? Number 2, who adapted the novel into a play? Number 3, when is the play set? Number 4, what is the genre of the play? Number 5, what is the style of the play? Number 6, who is the woman in black? What is the name of the character? Number 7, why is she haunting Eelmarsh House? And number 8, how is the play different to the novel? So pause the video after each question, write down your answers, and then we'll see how you got on at the end of the video. So this I am calling Tabletop Tales. It is my way of telling you the story of the woman in black using things that I have found in my kitchen cupboard. I'm hoping that the objects will help you remember the characters and what the characters are like. So we have the actor. This is a bottle of fizzy water. He's very energetic, very bubbly, and he wants to help Arthur Kipps tell his story about the woman in black. We have a bottle of vinegar. This is old Arthur Kipps. Okay, he's the one that's been haunted by the woman in black and thinks telling his story might help him come to terms with what has happened. Through the course of the play, he goes on to play all of the other characters that we come across, and so those are Keckwick, the pony and trap driver, shown here by some coarse sea salt. He's fairly grumpy, fairly cross with people, quite short, doesn't really speak. We have some honey. This is Samuel Daly. He is a local landowner in Criffan Gifford, and he's a bit sweet, a bit lovely, bit of a hero, helps Arthur Kipps out in his times of trouble. And then we have a wibbly wobbly jelly to show Mr. Jerome, who is a local in the village and is terrified of the woman in black. Now, sitting behind all of those, we have the woman in black, shown here through a can of deodorant. We are not meant to believe that she is an actress. We are meant to believe that we have seen the ghost ourselves, and so she doesn't appear in any of the programme notes or gets a bow at the end or anything like that. So I'm going to use these items to tell you the story of the woman in black. The Woman in Black, Act 1. The play starts with old Arthur Kipps on stage on his own, reading from his manuscript. It was 9:30 on Christmas Eve. From the back of the auditorium, we have the actor criticising the way that Kipps is delivering his lines. The actor wants to help Kipps tell his story about the woman in black, and so they decide in their rehearsal that the actor will take on the role of young Arthur Kipps, and old Arthur Kipps will play all of the other characters as well as narrating the story. And so they decide they begin to rehearse the play. Young Arthur Kipps hears of the death of Alice Drablow, and he is sent to the village of Criffan Gifford to sort through her papers. On his way to the village on the train, he meets Samuel Daly. Now, he tells Samuel Daly why he's travelling to the village, and Samuel Daly tells him that he's probably going to be the only person at Alice Drablow's funeral because she wasn't a very popular lady. The next morning, young Arthur Kipps meets Mr. Jerome, and they go to Alice Drablow's funeral. Now, in the church is the first time that young Arthur Kipps sees the woman in black in one of the pews behind him. At the end of the funeral, he asks Mr. Jerome whether he saw the lady, and like a wibbly wobbly jelly, he becomes very frightened, very terrified, and ushers Mr. Kipps away and says that he didn't see a woman. Now, the next day, Keckwick arrives to take young Arthur Kipps to Eelmarsh House in a pony trap across the causeway. Now you can only get to Eelmarsh House when the tide is low and you can cross the causeway, so Keckwick can only take him at certain times of the day. When he gets to Eelmarsh House, he spends the day going through papers, exploring the house, and he discovers a graveyard at the back. This is the second time that he sees the woman in black, and he's desperate to find out who she is, so he tries to follow her but can't find who she is. He decides he wants to try and return to the village on foot, and so he starts to cross the causeway. Now a deep fog descends and young Arthur Kipps ends up getting lost, so he tries to turn and go back to the house. As he's doing this, he can hear a pony and trap. Now he assumes that that's Keckwick, but he can't see him. He listens as the pony and trap gets stuck in the mud, and he hears the pony and trap and the people on it drown. He returns to the house where he finds the door for the first time. Because he's quite distressed, he can't open it, it is locked. And then he finds Keckwick, which he's quite surprised because he had assumed that he had died. At the end of Act 1, young Arthur Kipps comes to the conclusion that the things that he has heard on the marshes must be ghosts, and that's where Act 1 ends. And so to Act 2. Act 2 begins with young Arthur Kipps speaking with Mr. Jerome, explaining to him what has happened at Eelmarsh House. He asks Mr. Jerome to come and help him, and like the wibbly wobbly jelly that he is, Mr. Jerome is too scared and says that he won't. So young Arthur Kipps speaks with Samuel Daly. Now Samuel Daly is really concerned about what's been happening with Arthur Kipps, and so he gives him his dog Spider. Young Arthur Kipps takes Spider back to Eelmarsh House. When he gets back to the house, he finds the door that was previously locked now open. He goes in and he finds a child's nursery, absolutely pristine. That night he hears knocking coming from the nursery, and he goes in and finds that the nursery has been ransacked and the rocking chair is rocking on its own. The next day he finds letters from a lady called Jeanette Humphreys. Now Jeanette Humphreys is Alice Drablow's sister. She was forced to leave because she was pregnant, and on having the baby, the family forced her to give him up for adoption. So Jeanette Humphreys gave her son to her sister Alice Drablow, and he came to live at Eelmarsh House. Now Jeanette couldn't live without the boy, and so she too moved back to Eelmarsh House. She formed a bond with the child, and the two of them were planning on running away. Now, before they could do that, the boy and his nanny were out on the pony and trap with Keckwick's father. They got into trouble on the causeway, the pony and trap got stuck in the mud, and everybody on the pony and trap drowned. Soon after, Jeanette Humphreys, she was driven mad by grief, and she died. After finding out this information, young Arthur Kipps experiences a series of terrifying events, finally resulting in him collapsing on the marshes trying to rescue Spider. He is found by Samuel Daly, who takes him back to the village, and Samuel Daly explains the curse of the woman in black, that anybody who sees the woman will lose their own child in a tragic accident. Now, young Arthur Kipps goes back to London, and he marries his girlfriend Stella, and they have a little boy. Months later, at a village fair, he once again sees the woman in black. Instantly, his child and Stella are thrown from the pony and trap they've been riding on, and the boy dies instantly. Stella dies 10 months later from her injuries, and that is where the story of the woman in black ends. Now, the actor asks old Mr. Kipps who he got to play the woman in black. Now, old Mr. Kipps has no idea what he's talking about, and this is the big plot twist. So we are now led to believe that the actor and ourselves as the audience have seen the woman in black, and in that way the curse continues. Spooky. I had to go back to the dark for this bit. So The Woman in Black is a ghost story, that's its genre. Yes, it has elements of tragedy, but ultimately we're being told a ghost story. So what key features are needed for a ghost story? First of all, it needs a ghost. That's Jeanette Humphreys. She is the woman in black. It also relies on setting and on atmosphere. So the use of weather, the use of fog, the fact we're in Eelmarsh House, Kipps is isolated from other characters. The use of psychology, the fact that the ghost has a psychological impact on Kipps. Now we see that in his breakdown in Eelmarsh House, the fact that we have the recorded sound of the voices that he can hear, of all the things that he's experienced while he's there. That shows the impact that Jeanette Humphreys has had on him. It also has to have elements of mystery. We don't know who the woman in black is for a large proportion of the play. And most key, I believe, is the element of escalation. The fact that things start very, very normal. In fact, the play uses comedy to juxtapose the scariness of the second part of the play. And I'm sure many of you got to the interval and thought, well, this isn't scary, you told us we'd be terrified. And then in the second half, we get that series of terrifying events, and it escalates and escalates and escalates until we and Kipps can't take the volume and the speed at which the events are happening. If you think about the way the play is put together, you can see all the elements of a traditional ghost story. Okay, back into the daylight. So the style of The Woman in Black, largely it is a piece of storytelling theatre. So the genre is it's a ghost story, and it uses the style of storytelling theatre. It also has elements of naturalism and non-naturalism. So mentioning a combination of those three styles would be the basis of a really good answer. How do we know that it's a piece of storytelling theatre? The key difference from the play to the novel is we get this idea of a play within a play. Now we call that meta theatre, when we know that there is a story being told within the play that we are watching. The fact that Kipps and the actor come in and out of rehearsal, signified by a change in lighting, by the fact they reference recorded sound, we know that we are watching the telling of a story. It relies really heavily on the use of narration. We sit for quite long periods of time listening to narrated passages. Spider disappearing on the marshes. It was 9:30 on Christmas Eve at the beginning. We're being told a story. We're constantly told as an audience to use our imaginations. The multi-use of props, the use of the basket, the use of costume, the fact that old Arthur Kipps, he just changes a hat and a coat to become lots of different characters, all combine to remind us that we're watching a story. However, the acting, we are meant to believe what we are watching. We're meant to be scared. The fact that we scream and then we laugh that we've screamed shows that it has an impact on us as an audience. And so we can see naturalism in the acting. Each of the characters that old Arthur Kipps plays is really carefully crafted. Keckwick is very different to Mr. Jerome, who is very different to Bentley, who is very different to Samuel Daly. And I'm going to do a follow-up video where we can look at the characterisation of each of those characters. So we have storytelling, we have naturalism, the use of multi-rolling creates that element of non-naturalism, as does the use of the set. And so using those three key words leads us to understanding the style of the play. Okay, so it's time for us to go through the answers to the questions from the beginning of the video. Hopefully you have picked up all the information you needed as we've gone along, but now it's time to check your understanding. So number one, who wrote the original novel? That's right, it was Susan Hill, well done. Number two, Stephen Mallatrat adapted the novel for the stage. The play is set during the Edwardian era. I'm sure some of you wrote Victorian, but it is actually the Edwardian era. The genre of the play is it's a ghost story. Some people write horror. I'm not sure if it goes that far, so I would stick with it being a ghost story. It is a piece of storytelling theatre, that's the style of it. It has elements of naturalism or non-naturalism, so points for those as well, but overall it is a piece of storytelling. The Woman in Black is Jeanette Humphreys. She is haunting Eelmarsh House because she gave up her son to her sister Alice Drablow. She came back to live in the house because she wanted to be near her son, and then she watched them die in a tragic accident. She now haunts the house, and anybody who sees her loses their child in a tragic accident. The play really isn't that different to the novel, other than the construct of a play within a play. It stays true to the original novel. So I hope you got lots of those right. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will be making another one looking at characterisation and the separate characters of the play. and hope you're all staying safe, and see you all soon. Goodbye.